It's probably worth noting here that thousands of years ago, philosophers and theologians would have said that to exist means anything that has a form or state of being. And this would include both visible and invisible objects. For something to be real, it had to be true everywhere, all the time. Real was seen as eternal in the sense that anything that is finite or temporary eventually goes away. Or as someone once wrote, grass withers and flowers fade away. In this worldview of reality, visible objects that are only temporary are not real. For example, in economics, there often exists financial bubbles, which results from people confusing temporary and visible objects with what is real. We saw this in the 1630s, when the tulip trade in Europe produced a pricing bubble for tulips, because people were led to believe that the demand for tulips was growing dramatically. When the Great Plague hit Europe, the tulip trade died, resulting in the devaluation of tulips, which then resulted in the collapse of the economy in Amsterdam, which was the tulip trade capital of Europe. The same economic bubble phenomena has occurred repeatedly throughout history, even as recently as the 2008 financial crisis in the US, where people considered housing prices to be real representations of the value of houses, but instead they turned out to be temporary. In this case, housing prices that were seen to be real and permanent weren't. Another concept related to exists and real is the concept of truth. Something is said to be true if it exists, and it is in fact the same thing it represents itself to be. On the other hand, something is counterfeit or not true if it exists or is real, but falsely represents its proper identity. Some objects are counterfeits of reality. Counterfeits are objects that exist and distort the real object it is supposed to represent, like counterfeit money. It looks like the real thing, but it does not reflect the promissory note of the government that the authentic currency does. Also, there are crowded streets in major cities where merchants try to sell knockoffs or fake replicas of expensive watches and purses. Therefore, we are warned to beware of objects which exist but are counterfeits and not true. Other names used for counterfeits of truth are myths, illusions, or fakes. Sometimes objects that are visible and temporary are not fake, but considered true reflections or models that point to or resemble something real. These objects may be true representations of reality, but are not themselves real. For instance, an architect builds a model of a hospital so people can see what it will look like, while the hospital is not yet built and observable. The model is not the real hospital, but only a representation that shows everyone the reality of the hospital, which is at the time unobservable. Changes in culture across centuries, due to enlightenment and advancement in sciences, have affected how philosophy and religion understand these two words, so that many people today have worldviews that do not recognize the classical distinctions between these two words. This progression of what it means to exist and to be real is certainly something we would want you to ponder throughout this course. A thought-provoking question for you might be, are contemporary views that equate exist and real more true than the original view, or are they more of a counterfeit?